So as a reminder for the competitive seats, we'll be giving each candidate 2 minutes to speak. And then we will be doing a Q&A session. We have 3 questions that we sent out to the candidates ahead of time, as well as 3 questions that we will accept from the public. If you are in the public and would like to ask a question, down below, you will see the Q&A button, and you can ask a question and we will select one of those. If we do not have enough questions, we have 3 backup questions. Okay, with that, we will be going in alphabetic order. So Grace, you can give your 2 minutes now.
Thanks. Thanks for organizing this, and thanks to everybody who showed up. My name is Grace Hancock. I'm running for Area B representative because I love this neighborhood. I think it's the best neighborhood in the city, and I want to help improve it and maintain the great things about it. When the pandemic hit last year, being able to walk around Palms and greet all of you and your pets from a distance was one of the most important things I did for my sanity. So now that things are reopening, I'm also happy to go back to enjoying our great restaurants and bars and getting to know our neighbors in person and improving the community in ways that otherwise couldn't happen. I'm a PhD student in molecular biology at UCLA and have lived in Palms for over 4 years. As a student, I've been involved with various groups at UCLA, including advancing women in science and engineering and advocating for student needs on our advisory committee. Most recently, I've been part of an exciting effort across all the UC to unionize our grad student workers to improve equity through bargaining for improved benefits and protections for all. In my free time, you might see me running around the neighborhood. I also really enjoy surfing, although I'm not great at it, watching basketball, cooking, and reading. As the representative for Area B, I would look forward to furthering all the great work that is already occurring in the neighborhood. My personal priorities align with those of my inspiring colleagues on the Palms Forward slate, including housing equity, resisting displacement during housing development, advocating for our unhoused community, and furthering racial and social justice in our community. I'm honored to be part of this hardworking and compassionate group. I look forward to interacting with and getting to know all my neighbors to better understand our needs and goals so that we can improve our neighborhood and also set the standard for the rest of Los Angeles to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Next up, Markham.
Hi, my name is Markham Stansberry Jr., and I have lived in Palms for over 25 years in the same building for 21. I am running because I know the power of a community coming together. When I was a kid, my dad, I used to always tell my dad, I wish I could have been a teenager in the 60s. And he would say to me, I'm glad you weren't, because with your desire to be so active, you probably would have been dead. In 2008, I quit my job as a teacher at Santa Monica, in the Santa Monica Unified School District, to run the Santa Monica office for the Obama-Biden campaign, unpaid. And I asked my friends to pay my bills to put in, while I put in the time that they were not able to do to accomplish something. And the beauty of that was just amazing. One of the beauties of the pandemic for me is a group called Buy Nothing. And on the way to a Buy Nothing pickup from Helen on the Palms Forward slate, I ran into her and Dana, and they began to talk to me about the neighborhood council and convinced me that it was something that I should be involved in. And I've for years worked for other people and been telling other people that they should run for office because XYZ, and figure it's time for me to put my foot in the pot and make it happen myself. I look forward to working with the Palms Neighborhood Council and would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Markham. Last up, we have Rebecca Lee Katz.
Neighbors and friends, I'm Rebecca Lee Katz, and I'm running to be your Area B rep. Originally from the Bay, I'm mixed. I moved to LA, where I am an attorney and an entrepreneur. I've worked for the federal government in Washington, D.C. and the Middle East, lucky enough to live in Lebanon. I went to Georgetown undergrad and worked full-time to graduate from George Washington University Law School. I've worked hard, and I know you have too. I've had to struggle, and I know you have too. I will leverage my experience in government, business, and the law to advocate for you and our community. And if you entrust me with this opportunity, I will not squander it. I will champion your voice from Palms to City Hall. In the last 4 years, we have survived such violence from institutionalized racism and legacies of privilege over poverty. We've witnessed the billionaire class and elite corporations game our political system to avoid paying their fair share in taxes. And in so doing, we watched as they decimated our infrastructure, healthcare system, and other support services so that when the global pandemic of COVID-19 attacked, 574,000 Americans died. How many families left behind and how many more continue to suffer? Well, crises like homelessness, income inequality, and racism are not new, but our political will is, because they are no longer acceptable to us in our society. And in this new and bright and hopeful era in our country's history, we are fighting for rights that we realize now must be human rights. A living wage, the right to housing, the right to education, a clean environment. And if you vote for me, I will carry your voice as a battle cry from Palms to City Hall.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. All right, that will move us into the Q&A. As I mentioned at the top, since there are 3 candidates, we'll be going in a kind of snake order. So we'll start with Grace, then Markham, then Rebecca, then Markham will go first for the next one, Rebecca, then Grace, and then finally Rebecca, then Grace, then Markham. Okay, I got it right. I'll double check my yes. All right, so we'll
figure it out.
First. I'll figure it out. Our first question. So, what are your ideas for improving the quality of life in Palms? How do you plan to work on the Palms NC board with other members to advocate for local Palms issues with the city of LA? And we'll start with Grace.
Thanks.
Sorry, one more thing. You have, is it 1 minute per each? 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes to answer.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
So I think we all know, it sounds like a lot of us have been here for a while. The West Side is becoming increasingly expensive as these tech companies move in. The cost of living will unfortunately continue to go up. So I would really like to see Palms maintain its affordability and prioritize resisting displacement of its community members. For homeowners and renters, I think we can achieve this by carefully considering how we approve new developments and push them to move towards low income and even public units above the minimums that are set by the city of LA. I think we can do better than those minimums. In turn, I think it's also important to include all of our community members in this discussion. So I would like to continue the work of the current neighborhood council to collaborate with existing advocacy groups, both on the West Side and within the city, to work with our unhoused residents, connecting them to the resources they need. On my slate, I'm running with this inspiring group of individuals who they've already taught me so much about the community and actions that we can continue to take. I look forward to working with them after the election on these measures. Through community impact statements, we also have a unique opportunity to influence the city of LA to implement positive changes or resist negative changes that we don't want. So I would also look forward to collaborating with other neighborhood councils to do part of this work within the committees.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Then we will now move to Markham.
Well, personally, I think it all starts with promoting engagement with each other. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and in my neighborhood, if I peeled an orange, threw the orange peel on the ground, you could count on a neighbor more than often as Mr. Johnson, who we call Sarge, to get on your case. And he didn't ask your parents, he just did it. And if someone was in need in the neighborhood, someone died, someone was sick, the neighborhood took care of each other. Once I remember my next door neighbor, Mr. Chalmers, stopped a burglary at our house, broad daylight, because someone was claiming to be our cousin. And he kind of stepped into it and said, well, you know, I know them, I've never seen you. When I first moved to Palms, I asked the next door neighbor to borrow a knife, and you would have thought that I was Jack the Ripper or somebody. And I think that happened because people are not used to their neighbors engaging with them. I mentioned buy nothing earlier. Really one of the beautiful things about the pandemic for me, not Rebecca, Grace was mentioning that, you know, walking around the neighborhood, just walking around the neighborhood, saying hello to your neighbors, taking them things, giving them things from your place that you're no longer using, sharing books, that kind of engagement promotes community. And when you know your neighbors and you engage with them, you are much more likely to protect them. And that's what we need in our neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, Markham. And last but not least, Rebecca, same question.
We improve life in Palms by supporting our local businesses, providing relief to the homeless, and strengthening our schools. We do that in two ways. One, rational tax policy, $400 billion. That's the total value of the 26 largest corporations and 71 billionaires who live in LA. We would be number 18 if we were our own country and a world economy. And yet 1 out of 5 of us lives below the poverty line. According to the MIT Living Wage Calculator, an actual living wage in LA for a single person would be $19.35. For someone with a child, $42, 2 children, $51, 3 children, $67. So we need to push for a true living wage through a rational tax policy where billionaires and mega corporations pay their fair share. Innovation in job creation policies and economic development are necessary, but this is our start. And number 2, through allyship. We partner with LA nonprofit organizations and bring them and their services here to our community. For me, there are 3 areas to focus on: opportunity, access, and inclusion. By opportunity, I mean economic development, COVID-19 relief, and grants for small businesses, and again, raising the minimum wage to a living wage. Opportunity means education. I believe in universal childcare and preschool, as well as free community college. Access means access to a clean environment to fighting climate change, augmenting Mayor Garcetti's Sustainable LA plan, as well as access to affordable housing through permanent supportive housing and enhancing rent control protections. And finally, inclusion means diversity and inclusion, integrating D&I through all services and expanding in particular our services for our seniors, as well as criminal justice reform, reallocating resources to social services, expunging cannabis-related offenses, and stopping ICE cooperation. So it's those 3 areas that I would focus on to enhance life in Palms.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Before we move to our next question, I just want to remind the public that there is a Q&A button at the bottom to submit questions for the candidates right here. And then with that, we'll move into our next question. What initiatives or events would you like to organize? As a board member, you would be required to serve on 1 or more Palms NC committees. Which one would you pick and why? And for this, we'll be starting with Markham.
By far the easiest question for me, because I would join the Racial and Social Justice Committee. First, me personally, I first became aware of race at 4 years old. And by the time I was 9 or 10, I figured out that if we could solve the problem of race, all our other problems would fall like dominoes. And I really and truly believe that. When I say I discovered race at 4 years old, what happened was I was the second Black person to ever attend the preschool I was going to. And my best friend was a guy named Marty. And we had been thick as thieves for 2 years. He had a toy for show and tell, and playtime came and I asked him to see his toy and he said he couldn't. And I thought he was messing around. I said it again, I never will forget. The second time I asked him that, he looked down at the ground and he said, I can't play with you because my mommy told me you were Black. And I went inside and cried until my mom picked me up. She took me to the bookstore and bought me a book on Dr. King, which I have to this day. And that really, that incident probably affected me more than any single incident in my life, because after that, for a period of time, I thought that I was bad and I was the only Black person. And I really believe that race is our ultimate problem. And we fix that, we fix a lot of things, believe me.
Okay, thank you, Markham. Same question to you, Rebecca. Which initiatives or events and which committee would you chair?
Palms is the greatest neighborhood in LA, and we need to attract consumers and other stakeholders to our community. I intend to join the Business Relations and Public Beautification Committee. I have an idea for First Fridays, but I think before we think of programs, the first thing that we need to do is ensure that any project we conceive of as data-driven. So I'd want to roll out a survey to the local business owners to see what are their needs, what is it that we can do to truly support them during COVID and during this time of economic downturn. And I think based on that data, I'm hopeful that one possibility would be bringing a kind of First Fridays to the area, not only to showcase our local businesses, but I think we should also, again, think of allyship, which I mentioned before. So that could also involve working with South Robertson and with Culver City to do a First Fridays on an even larger scale. And I think we want to focus on helping not only the types of businesses you expect to participate in a First Fridays, so galleries and restaurants and cafes and the food and beverage industry. And I want to note that Culver City Arts District was hailed by USA Today as one of the top 10 arts districts in the nation. So again, by partnering with our neighbors, we could really achieve something huge for Palms. But again, not only thinking about those types of businesses, but also service providers. If you are a local accountant or real estate office, how could we promote you in the sort of First Fridays? So this kind of community building event that would really help local business owners showcase, what makes their business unique. I think that's just one idea I have. But again, it really needs to be focused on the responses we get from our constituents, for our neighbors and friends, whether it's through a survey or other means. I really intend to focus on dedicating myself to serving Palms on the business committee.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. All right, for Grace, same question. Which initiatives or events would you like to plan, and which committee would you like to serve on? Thank you.
Thanks. As I mentioned before, I think I'm most interested in being very conscientious as Palms inevitably undergoes expansion and development in the upcoming years. It's going to affect all of us, but keeping equity in mind will be the most important thing in moving forward. So I would look forward to working with the Planning and Land Use Management Committee on this, coming up with creative ways to resist displacement and the rent hikes while still supporting growth and expansion that can largely benefit our community. There are some great groups in Los Angeles that are already lobbying for these efforts. So I think partnering with them on this and working with developers and renters and landlords is one great way that we can have a real impact. In the near future, as the community comes back together after the pandemic, I think we can all benefit from some in-person work and play. Cleanups of our sidewalks and green spaces are great ways to help the community and also get to know each other. And same thing with a community day. These are events that I'd like to help plan so we can get to know each other, learn about our needs, contribute to the growing camaraderie, and inspire more people to get involved. I think Markham mentioned the Buy Nothing Facebook group. Mutual aid initiatives like this are also ways that I felt more connected to the neighborhood. The Palms Bridge is another really amazing effort that came this year. So I think just encouraging mutual aid efforts like this will just continue to build a strong community that we can all benefit from.
Okay, thank you, Grace. All right, before we move to the next question, we do realize that we're getting some questions from the Facebook Live. So if you ask a question there, we will forward it on and take that as part of the sampling. Okay, for the final question, the prepared ones, how do you think Palms Neighborhood Council should work with the LA County and the City of Los Angeles to end homelessness in our neighborhood? And for this one, we will starting with Rebecca.
So we have 568,000 homeless people in the US, with 151,000 in California, 66,000 in LA County, and 41,000 in LA, according to the City of LA's count last year. So we are disproportionate in terms of the challenge that we're facing for our homeless community. A few days ago, Mayor Garcetti announced that he intends to dedicate $1 billion in the next year to addressing the homelessness crisis. And as context, when Mayor Garcetti took office in 2013, the spending by the city was $10 million. So from $10 million to $1 billion. So what that really means for us in Palms is that we need to ensure that we are front and center in partnering with the city and being actively involved as a stakeholder in this rollout. Garcetti said that $24 million will go to providing $1,000 a month to 2,000 households a year. There's also going to be a one-year pilot project where the city will dispatch a mental health professional as opposed to a police officer to a nonviolent crisis. And we also have the 2016 bond measure, which voters approved to create 10,000 housing units over the next 10 years, which has had a rather slow rollout. So because I'm very focused on rational tax policy, of course, I think we need more bond measures such as that with a much higher threshold. And again, making sure that of all the communities in LA, when it comes to this exponential jump in investing in our homeless community, that we are right there partnering front and center with the city. And I think it's important to also keep in mind, the homeless community is a very diverse community. At my past law firm, I actually organized a volunteer day at at a food kitchen here in LA. But in any event, the homeless community involves people who are working, but because of our economic situation are unable to really make a living wage, as well as people who need more health services and addiction counseling. So I also think we need a thoughtful homeless policy that addresses those unique needs in a strategic manner.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Same question for Grace. How would you work with the county and city to help end homelessness in this neighborhood?
Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important that we include our unhoused community in this discussion and the policy making. Overall, we must work to make it a more equitable community and prioritize the dignity and respect of our unhoused neighbors. I'm very supportive of using public space to implement safe parking, camping, and housing for those seeking it, as has been proposed by the City of LA. But there are also many amazing existing groups that help connect unhoused individuals with resources and protections while they're in their encampments. So I would advocate for collaboration with these groups so that unhoused individuals can have their needs met. For some that are seeking permanent housing, shelter, or safe camping. But I also think that a top priority is fighting forced removal of individuals from community encampments where they have established relationships, possessions, and goods. As we work to provide more housing for everyone, we must also keep the encampments safe and clean and a good environment so that our unhoused neighbors can have their basic human rights met and be connected to city services for healthcare, food, and safety. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, now the question is same question to Markham for how would you work with the city and county to help end homelessness in Palms neighborhood?
Well, the first thing I do is work to create affordable housing that's connected to probably three things. First being job training, second being mental health, and then probably also drug counseling. And I say that honestly, I probably wouldn't have been able to say that pre-pandemic without walking around the neighborhood. I mentioned the job first because if you don't have a job, no matter how affordable the housing is, you're probably likely to fall back into being homeless. Walking around the neighborhood, there's a trail down Exposition, and when the pandemic started, there was a maybe one part of it, like right by the Sprouts on the left side, had homeless people. Now that has grown to people on the opposite side and people on the other side of the track. So people need jobs, and the condition they're in, some of them are very clearly using drugs, but your mental health suffers when you're not able to have one of the three basic needs met. Like Rebecca, I graduated from Georgetown, but one of my biggest fears has always been being homeless. And people say, "Oh, you graduated from Georgetown. That never happened to you." I in my particular building, because I've been here so long, my landlord tried to have me evicted because they wanted to raise the rents. Part of that could be establishing a renter-tenant coalition for the Palms Group to combat landlords who are trying to circumvent the rent control by getting rid of the long-term tenants. But I think it all starts with affordable housing and job training. And
okay,
that's how I would start it.
Okay, thank you. All right, now moving on to, we have a few public questions. I will start with one that regards kind of more about civic engagement. So what are your plans to increase civic engagement among Palms residents who are mainly workers and students, or renters in this case? How would you increase the visibility of the Palms NC and organize the neighborhood to involve more neighbors to become active participants in NC activities, but also or in citywide activities to support living wages, healthcare access, etc. So, and really in the engaging more with our stakeholders. So with that, I will ask Grace to start that.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the thoughtful question. I think that the current neighborhood council has a really amazing social media account, and as I was running, I've had neighbors say, "Oh, I saw the lawn sign." So I think that efforts like these have already been really effective at spreading the word. But I think it comes down to people leveraging their networks to just connect people to each other. As soon as you start getting involved, you kind of learn that everybody knows everybody, and many of us have the same goals. So it's really inspiring. And I think that having a positive outlook on making change is one way to encourage people to get involved. As far as the student community in Palms, I think that that's a really unique opportunity where students know each other, use a lot of public transportation. There's a lot of interaction that occurs. So I think just finding ways to encourage people to reach out to their friends and focus on an issue that they care about. I've found that that's been some helpful advice, not to take on everything at once, but focus on something, and then you'll meet others who have the same passion, and it kind of just snowballs from there. So I think that with our diverse community of students and workers and people of all ages, we have a really good opportunity to make a lot of change in a lot of different areas.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Now we'll move to Markham, who, same question on increasing the civic engagement among.
Could you repeat the question,
Yeah,
please?
it's also in the Q&A at the bottom, but I will repeat it. What are your plans to increase civic engagement among the Palms residents who are mainly workers and students? And how would you increase the visibility of Palms NC and organize the neighborhood to involve more neighbors to become more active participants in NC activities or citywide activities, etc.?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to what I started off talking about, which is engaging with your neighbors, because if you don't know, if Dana and Helen hadn't talked to me about it, I very likely wouldn't be sitting here today. I've seen the signs, but I think more than a sign, more than an email, more than a text, people respond to person-to-person contact. And when you actually physically engage with someone, the likelihood of you reaching them, it just goes up. And if you connect with someone like Grace was talking about on an issue that they care about, they're passionate about, you're started, and if you give people the information, that's power. And talking to people about Palms NC and the things that are done, I think is great. There've been a couple of block parties that I've gone to that the neighborhood council organized, and those kinds of things. I think we need more of them, because if you know your neighbors, you will look out for your neighbors, and we will all be safer because of that.
Okay, thank you, Markham. Rebecca, same question on the engagement. Sorry, Rebecca, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, my puppy was barking. Thank you for that very thoughtful question. And I want to respond with a very thoughtful and specific answer. So first of all, I think civic engagement is why we've seen so many people get excited about these elections, because of what we have endured as a country for the last 4 years. I know that's why I'm getting involved. And so I think it's a number one issue. I'm going to thread some of the specific things that I mentioned earlier, because I think I was the only candidate to talk about certain specific programs I'd like to initiate. The idea of First Fridays is not only to give a spotlight on local businesses, but it really is a way to build community. Again, I'm from the Bay, and if you look at Oakland or other cities across the country that have done those types of events, it really brings the community together. And I think it's important to partner with, Pico Robertson, with Culver City, take advantage of the corridors of amazing restaurants and businesses and happenings we have locally. I think that's a great way to get people, whether they're students, workers, any demographic, really engaged. And I think also events focused on, faith-based community groups that we have, as well as our schools, is key. I think social media really needs to be, I'm so sorry, stepped up. The algorithms for Facebook and Instagram have really changed. So you'll see, the Palms NC postings get, 5 or 6 likes. And I empathize with that challenge because in addition to practicing law at a law firm, I also have a cannabis startup. So I'm dealing myself with how much social media has changed. So there are really so many opportunities for us to really promote the neighborhood council and really, more importantly, serve our constituents, students, youth, and workers, and make sure that whatever their needs are being heard and addressed. And I think a way we do that is really enhancing and advancing our social media, which really should have some major changes considering how much those platforms have changed in the last few months. So those are some of the specific things I would do to address your question.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. All right, we'll be moving to the next public question we have. How would you ensure customers and visitors to Palms community are also heard? So those stakeholders that are not residents or business owners, basically. And for that, we will start with Markham, and we'll give you a little bit extra time to, since you're first.
I think to ensure that visitors to our community are heard, like if you invite them to neighborhood council functions, make sure, again, going back to engaging, people, I have friends here that don't live in the neighborhood, but who attend church in the neighborhood. And if people have a stake in the community, they want it to be a safe and engaging, prosperous community. So I don't have any problem with people from outside the community who are regular visitors and contributors to the community being engaged with the neighborhood council. And I think that's something we should absolutely do.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Markham. Same question to you, Rebecca. What ways would you engage the customers and visitors in Palms? How would you ensure that customers and visitors in Palms community are also heard?
I think that's another great question, because what it brings to mind is the fact that, we're talking about Palms and the needs of Palms, which is, of course, primary, but we're part of LA. We're part of a community. Very few of us just live, work, and play within these boundaries. And so we want to make sure that when we're protecting, enhancing our community, I think we're doing the same for the rest of LA. And also, vice versa, that other Angelenos who come to our community feel safe, feel heard, have a reason to come, spend money, invest, engage, socialize. So I think number one, a big part of it is what we have to offer. I think Palms is the most fantastic part of LA. I think everyone here agrees, but I think it's how we really showcase it and, thinking about what types of events would bring people here. Again, the First Fridays, I think, checks a lot of boxes. I also think safety is a part of it. That means, whether it's supporting more expansion of our public transit or reduced costs to ride, making it more accessible for everyone from every financial background to be able to come on over to Palms and get to know us. I think also addressing the homeless issue is a big part of that, not only for the human dignity within the homeless community, but because the reality is it can be very difficult when there's a homeless community in front of your business, in front of your building. So making sure people have, number one, a reason to come, which is spotlighting all the fantastic businesses and community happenings we have here. Number two, making sure it's safe and secure so that people feel welcomed. Number three, that it's affordable and accessible through really thoughtful public transportation improvements. And I would say those would be some of the things that I would just start to explore to think through that question.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. And finally, Grace, same question of how would you ensure customers and visitors to Palms community are heard?
Thanks. I think that you both touched on similar ideas that I would also support. Yeah, I think people come to the neighborhood for various reasons, whether that's to visit the businesses, visit friends, spend time outside. So we can work on just supporting all of those things to encourage people to come, and also making sure that it's a pleasant experience when they do come. So I think that continuing to support small businesses, and like I mentioned with housing development, also considering which businesses we support in establishing themselves here during as we continue to grow and change. And then also just making it easier for people to come. So like parking is obviously one of the most contentious issues that we all deal with sometimes, but in addition to public transportation. So I think that thinking about smart ways to allow parking without where it's fair for everyone, but also considering where bus stops are, adding more bus stops if needed, working with transportation companies to improve accessibility, cleanliness of our streets and bus stops, just making it easy to get here and spend time and enjoy it without logistical problems and coming in. And yeah, and also just I know that many have spoken about beautification, and that also matters, and just outdoor spaces and murals and art, and that's just one of the things that makes our neighborhood unique and will continue to make our neighborhood unique.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Our final question from the public. What is a unique experience that makes you well suited to improve the community? So with that, we will start with Rebecca.
A unique experience. Well, I have the gift of gab, as you can tell. I get it from my mom. So I'm going to mention quite a few experiences because I can't think of one because I'm not quick enough on my feet. So I've always worked multiple jobs. I worked through law school, so going to law school at night and working full time. I was working for the federal government, so I was actually traveling to Afghanistan and throughout the United States. And I finished law school a semester early and #1 in my class that graduating semester. And everybody works hard in the city. So I'm by no means special. I'm really quite common in that regard. But I think when you're waitressing, working at a nonprofit organization, teaching SAT prep, and working 7 days a week, and that's what you've done your whole life, it's a different kind of experience. I didn't have anything handed to me. And so again, I'm not the exception, I'm the rule. It's a very American experience. And by American, I mean, if you're in the US, you're American. So we've all gone through it. My mom's family's from Hawaii, and thinking about what she sacrificed and what my family sacrificed, that's why I work a 7-day work week. And I think another part of it that drives me is, I've always worked in nonprofits up until very recently. So I think I've always been focused on giving back to my community. That was my job. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was my entire career was working in international nonprofits and, moving to a law firm, still organizing community service days. I volunteered at the LA County Bar's Domestic Violence Center because I myself am a survivor of domestic violence. I have a scar on my left leg that I'm almost proud to wear because of what I got through. So I think when you have those experiences, whether it's hard work and grit, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I've never been, but I had to bust my butt to get where I am. And knowing that nothing is easy, being mixed, Asian American, and as a woman, I certainly have many privileges, but I don't have every privilege because we live in a society that's effectively created a totem pole. And I'm very aware of that and aware of how hard I need to work to achieve what it is I'm intending to do. And in this moment, what I intend to do is
Thank you, Rebecca.
And serve our community.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, apologies with the time limit. Okay. All right, same question to Grace. What unique experience what unique experience that makes you well suited to improve our community. You're on mute.
Thanks. So I think that many of us, we're all here because we care about the community, and we're all hard workers. And I think it's really amazing that so many of us want to help and give back. As far as my personal experience, I came to LA for grad school, and in that time, I think I've developed a sense of community with, first kind of at UCLA within my department and program, but then in the neighborhood, and just understanding what drives people and what helps people feel valued and safe. I think the grad student experience, while it is an extremely privileged and kind of siloed off corner that not everybody has experienced, it can be extremely alienating, and you don't have a lot of autonomy, and it can feel very isolating and demoralizing, like many jobs. So I think that I understand what it's like to be a worker, and just advocating for workers' rights, and equity so that we can enjoy the other parts of life that we're here for. So I think just like giving everybody a chance to enjoy that. And if that's through services and safety and having basic needs met and just space and mutual aid, those are the things that kind of got me through the grad school experience and will continue to get me through whatever's next, as I join the community as a working member.
Okay, thank you, Grace. All right, and finally, we'll wrap it up with Markham. What unique experience makes you well suited to contribute and improve the Palms community?
I'd say a couple of things. One, I mentioned earlier, the need for protection of renters and tenants. After living in my building for 19 years, my building was sold, and the new owners systematically got rid of all of the long-term tenants with the exception of 6. They tried to evict me for really ridiculous reasons. And I gained a lot of experience going through that, and learned about resources available to help people going through that. And it's not something that's unique for me. Like it'll happen to anybody who's been in their building for a long time, but especially if it's rent control. The unit above mine, same floor layout, rents for over $1,000 more, and these landlords will do whatever they can to get you out. Another thing, experience I would say that would be very helpful is that when I was at Georgetown, I was a manager for the basketball team, and being in that position of service, having to navigate high-level athletes, a coach with extremely high expectations, and having to deal with high-pressure situations has been invaluable in every aspect of my life. From teaching, I'm an actor and a writer, and coming through in high-pressure situations from having been the manager for the basketball team has proven to be extremely helpful, and I think I would be able to apply those skills on the neighborhood council.
You're on mute, Jeremiah.
It wouldn't be a Zoom session if I didn't wasn't on mute at one point on this. So as I was saying on mute, that wraps up our Q&A session. So we will now give the candidates one final 30 seconds to give a closing remark. So with that, we will start with Grace.
Thanks, Jeremiah. Since I've lived in Palms over the years, I really love its uniqueness, the unique businesses and outdoor spaces and streets and people. Meeting those in the community who are engaged and passionate about making change has been so motivating. And I really look forward to moving into a position like this on the Palms Neighborhood Council Board as I finish my time as a grad student and consider my larger role in the community. I will continue to learn about our community needs and how we can best address them. I hope that my priorities of advocating for support of our unhoused community, carefully considering our neighbors' housing affordability, mutual aid, and community building will resonate with you, and you'll consider supporting me as the Area B representative.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Markham, closing statements.
Yes, as I said, I'm a long-term member of this community, over 25 years. And if you want a Georgetown grad or someone who has been involved with UCLA like Grace, I taught at UCLA. So you can get two birds with one stone. I'll cover Rebecca and Grace, and I'm looking forward to being engaged in the community and helping everyone prosper in Palms.
Okay, thank you, Markham. Rebecca, closing statements, please.
Palms is the greatest place to live in LA, but our diverse, hardworking residents deserve much more. What we survived in the last 4 years is not an anomaly. It's what results from generations of racism and an economy that isn't free market or capitalist, but is controlled by a small elite. So let's not waste any more time. Let me get to work for you, for us. Let's fight not just to keep Palms as beautiful as it already is, but to make it beautifully fair and inclusive and accessible and just. Because we don't leave our community as we find it, but we make it how we want it to be. Thank you, and vote for me.
Okay, thank you, candidates. I think that was a good round of statements and the closing statements and questions.